Everyone loves football.
It's a Zach Gelb Show. Football Friday on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
That's right, Football Friday on the Zach Gelb Show. We get closer and closer to Sunday with the Eagles going out to the Los Angeles Chargers to play them, and we're all looking forward to that. Eagles look to go 3-1 on the season. Chargers have started off the year 0-3. Let's go out to L.A. right now and welcome in the play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Chargers, and that's Matt Money Smith, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Matt, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
I'm doing well. I'd probably be doing a little bit better if the Chargers had a single win and weren't searching for it and had all this pressure on them, that's for sure.
What do you make of this 0-3 start? You played the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Chiefs. I know Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are, but the Chargers, a lot of people think they're better than this 0-3 start.
Well, the one was the Dolphins game. I mean, that really was the one where there were just a lot of mistakes that allowed the Dolphins to stay in that game. And obviously, a missed 44-yard field goal. I actually went back and did, a little bit of sniffing around to see what the likelihood of that was. And that miss only happens 18% of the time in a game-winning situation. So that's something you expect your kicker to do, but it's not just that one play. There was a little bit of clock mismanagement. There were a couple, on that second-to-last drive, Melvin Gordon's going out of bounds instead of keeping the clock running. So I think it's little things like that lead to a team to be 0-3. You have to execute play in and play out in the NFL because everybody is so damn good.
You take a look at the first-year head coach and Anthony Lynn coming over from Buffalo, where he was the offensive coordinator. Through the first 3 games, I know it's only 3 games into someone's young coaching career, but what do you like and what do you dislike so far? What does he need to improve on when you look at Anthony Lynn?
Oh, I think the players love him, so that's a big one. They really like him. He's straightforward, no BS. He's a football guy, and he's a grinder and someone that, made a roster as a special teamer, worked his way up as a rotational back, won a couple Super Bowl trophies, and I think they appreciate that, from 1 to 53. And the practice squad guys, he is certainly relatable because of the path to get where he was and also the success ultimately, and a couple championships. But I do think he's green. There's no question about it. I think he is still trying to figure out the difference between being a coordinator, a position coach, and a head coach, and how time management, that's something certainly they know in Philadelphia because fairly or not, Andy Reid had always been dogged for clock management and timeouts and things like that. And it's clear that that's something he's still trying to sort out. I mean, they darn near got a penalty in that Dolphins game because he was maybe, we don't know, but maybe trying to take a timeout that wasn't there. Phillip was looking to spike the ball, but then ultimately the Dolphins took a timeout and kind of bailed him out.
Us here on the East Coast, every time we talk about the Chargers, everyone still wants to call them the San Diego Chargers, and we continue to mess that up. But they're now playing in Los Angeles. A new start for the Chargers in Los Angeles. Describe the Los Angeles experience so far, being so close to it.
Well, the game day experience is second to none. I would assume we're going to see a ton of Eagles fans at the game on Sunday, just like we're going to see a ton of Browns fans and Bills fans when they play, because there's nothing like it. And when you're a visiting team from out of the division, this is your one shot. It's hard to describe because everyone's like, well, it's kind of like a high school football stadium. I said, yeah, but it's not high school football. When you're in a high school football stadium, you're watching high school football because they're high school kids. This is top-level competition. The hits are as violent. The splash plays are as big. The talent and just watching running backs, cut and move and fly as they accelerate like Kareem Hunt did last week is different to see it in that atmosphere and that close. So that's always going to be there for the next 3 years. People are going to be excited to want to experience something unique that they will never be able, I think, to get again. And it's a shame. It's too bad that more teams aren't thinking about building sort of boutique stadiums to have a special experience. And I think that would solve some of the problems, that some of these markets have in getting people off their couch. So that part of it's going great. As far as building a fan base, it's going to take a while. I don't think they had any misconceptions. I certainly didn't, that they were just going to announce, hey, we're the Los Angeles Chargers, and a ton of people in L.A., we're going to like them. You got to win, and the one thing they do have, as long as he stays healthy and and isn't, too deep into his career to not be effective anymore, they have a star. Phillip Rivers is a star. He's great with the media. He's recognizable. He is I don't want to say surefire, but a likely Hall of Famer. And that's what you need in this town. You need to win, and you need a star. They have those, they have the ladder. They just need the wins now.
Yeah, I can't even imagine it from a player's perspective. And I know players, change teams frequently, but for just a team to get up and move, we knew it was coming from San Diego that they were going to be leaving San Diego. But since this is still new to the players, how have they been taking upon the change to now moving out to Los Angeles?
They've been fine. I think because it was so close, it was a little bit easier. At the same time, you'll hear, I haven't even been able to unpack all of my boxes. And I would assume that's a little unsettling. Some of the older players that have kids in school had to figure that out, get them enrolled. And they said, that's more on their wives. And they're the ones that had to take on that challenge. So I think for the most part, it's really not an excuse, and they have not tried to make it an excuse with this rough start, even for Rivers, who chose to still live in San Diego and commute.
Matt Money Smith with us right now on a Football Friday on the Zach Gelb Show. Since you mentioned Phillip Rivers, and we know that has been the identity of this team for many years, and you also have Melvin Gordon in that backfield. Going up against the Eagles defense, which is decimated with some injuries, what do you expect out of Rivers and Melvin Gordon coming up on Sunday?
Well, I think, you said it, decimated by injury, and we know that the Chargers have talent on the outside. Keenan can't be covered man-to-man. Keenan Allen's just too good. He is as good a route runner as you got in the NFL, which is why he gets so many targets and converts so many of those to catches. So I would expect to see a pretty heavy dose of Keenan and probably some play-action shots down the field like we saw, early on in the season, in the preseason, Travis Benjamin and Tyrell Williams. But that said, Anthony Lynn wants the identity of this team to be a running football team. And even though they were down 14-0, he got after that in the first half against the Chiefs, and it was working. Melvin was ripping off carries at nearly 5.5 per clip. And then his knee tightened up when he went into the locker room, and they just could not get that running game going again. So I don't know if I answered that question, but I think they want to be a run-first team as far as their head coach and identity goes. At the same time, I think, like you said, with the injuries the Eagles seem to have on the defensive side, it looks like they have an opportunity to really take advantage of Phillip Rivers in the passing game.
With what you said about his health, where is Melvin Gordon at right now? How full to 100% is he right now?
I mean, they're telling us that he's fine, that he's good, that he expects to have a full workload, and if that's what it's going to be a heck of a lot of Gordon and just a tiny bit of Brandon Oliver and Austin Eckler. So as far as I can tell, and I can only go by what they say to me, they say he's ready, even though they held him out of practice yesterday.
Well, the encouraging news for the Eagles, they expect Jordan Hicks to play. They also expect Rodney McLeod to play, but Fletcher Cox, which is the best defensive player for the Eagles, is not going to make the trip. We know he's out for this game. Eagles have a very deep, though, defensive line, and you did get to see that even last week up against the Giants and the two other games before that. This Chargers offensive line, what do you make of the offensive line, especially with the tough tasks that they have to go up against, even though Fletcher Cox won't be playing?
Yeah, it really has been the surprise position group. There's no question. I thought they were going to really have a tough go. And they've been great. Not just good, but great in pass blocking. Now, they have not been good in run blocking. Last week was really, and it wasn't even a full game. It was just the first half. Was the first time we'd seen an effective running game from this team. And I don't know how much of that was due to the injury to Joe Barksdale and just signed off, a practice squad, Michael Schofield, coming in and doing a heck of a job. I mean, they really blocked well on that right side for the first time all season. As far as a pass rush, of the Eagles and, like you said, a very good defensive line that rotates a lot of bodies, they held up against Von Miller, didn't have a single quarterback hit or sack. He had a couple hurries, but no sacks, no hits. What that Denver pass rush looks like. And last week, the only real big splash play we saw from Justin Houston was run on a stunt on the inside. He got Kenny Wiggins, the right guard, as opposed to coming off the edge. So that's really been the surprise, I think, of everything, of any position group this early season here.
I'll flip it around in the trenches. You look at this Eagles offensive line, they've been very inconsistent, had their best game of the season last week up against the Giants. And we all know the Chargers just have an incredible front with Bosa and Melvin Ingram. So break down that for me as we flip the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what so many of us thought was going to carry this team to a 10-6 type of record and contend for the division crown. And they have been that good. I mean, Melvin Ingram's the AFC Defensive Player of the Month. He's got 5.5 sacks. He's unstoppable because I think most teams have decided that they have to double Bosa. That of the two, he's the one guy that's got to get the extra O-lineman or the tight end or the back, shaded to his side. So he's really been taking on those double teams. It's left Melvin open one-on-one, and he can't be stopped. He's just in that kind of groove right now. That's why the game was still in the balance, despite the 3 picks and the 14-0 hole, and the Chargers offense punting every single time they had the ball in the second half. It was still 14-7 until the final 2 minutes, and that, I think, was a huge product of what Melvin Ingram was doing. So that's going to be tough for any team coming in. And like you said, if you have an offensive line that's inconsistent and you need to use the tight end somewhere to help them out, it's hard to do it on both sides. Now, the one benefit the Eagles will have is the fact that Jason Verrett's hurt and out for the year, So now they're mixing and matching their corners. It's Trevor Williams, and he's done okay, but he's not Jason Verrett. And I think they're still looking for that high safety for Gus Bradley's cover 3 scheme. I just don't quite think it's Trey Boston full-time yet. They're still giving him that shot, but I think they're still trying to figure that out. You saw it last week with Alex Smith, that touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill when they caught the linebacker Nigel Harris in coverage, and that was just a wild mismatch. So I suspect Doug Peterson's going to probably try to exploit that part of the defense, knowing that the defensive line is just about darn near impossible to figure out.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was hearing you talk a little bit earlier as we're talking to Matt Money Smith about the run-pass ratio with the Los Angeles Chargers. Like here in Philadelphia, I have no clue what to expect for this upcoming Sunday because the first 2 weeks of the season, all they did was throw. Like in the Chiefs game, they had 56 dropbacks to 13 running plays. And then last week up against the Giants, they had more rushing plays than passing plays. So I have no clue what to expect from this Eagles offense this week, Matt.
Yeah, and, it's really the Chargers defense has been susceptible to the run.
Yeah.
They've been good against the pass. So that's something that probably breaks in their favor unless, Doug Peterson can get, Smallwood or Blunt or one of those guys, or maybe it's Clement that he gets going because that's, CJ rushed for 120. Kareem Hunt had that big 69-yard run and had already had 100 combined, yards from scrimmage before that run even. So that's clearly where they, and Jay Ajayi had 120 yards. So that's where their weakness is. It's in that middle with Mebane and Legit. And it's actually, that's not fair. It's not on them. It's the linebackers. With Denzel Perriman out, they don't have anybody with sand in their ass. That's the problem. Jatavis has been their leading tackler, but he's not big enough to work inside there. And that's what's really hurt them in the running game, is trying to slow those guys down. If, in fact, they get a hole open to break through, the linebackers are having a heck of a time tackling.
What do you make of Carson Wentz, being someone that doesn't get to see him as much as we do? What are your thoughts on Carson Wentz?
Oh, I love him. I absolutely love him. I cover the Combine for NFL.com and NFL Network, and there are very, very few guys that leave an impression. And they, we sit with all of them because I broadcast from the field. We have our table down on the field right where they're finishing all their 40 times. So pretty much when guys are done working out, they just walk over and we sit down with Bucky Brooks and me, or maybe Daniel Jeremiah sitting with us, and we just chop it up with him. And he is special. He's just got that presence, and he's huge, and I think that's one of those things that, also I had not spent a lot of time around Phillip Rivers when I got the Chargers gig. The first time I was able to spend some time with him, you're just like, my God, this guy's a giant. And that's just different when you have something like that at the quarterback position, knowing that they're probably going to hold the ball that extra half second and take the lick because they're big enough to do it, and Carson's he's impressive. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to him. I'm sure you've been around him. He is, obviously he's got the physical tools and he's got a presence, and you can tell it's somebody that could be a leader of men, and that's what you need at that position. So, yeah, I thought it was the no-brainer number one pick. And sure, Jared Goff's starting to show some things, and that's great for the Rams, but I was so much more impressed with my conversation with him, I should say our conversation with him, than I was with Goff when we were all trying to figure out who's the number one, who's the number two.
You're exactly right. His maturity, just being around him last year and then this year in OTAs and preseason games and regular season games, and also just how much they have thrown on his plate in the last 2 years. Like the first 2 weeks of this season, throwing the ball 50-something times. Last year, getting him ready in less than 10 games before the season, losing Lane Johnson. It's just very impressive. But, a few of those knocks, and you mentioned them, holding on to the ball a little bit too long. But another one has been the deep ball accuracy problems. How much of a concern is that for you?
I mean, that'll come, I think. And I think it's also, you think about your wide receiver core, and it's brand new, and I do think there is something to it takes time. I don't think there's any two ways about it. I don't think someone comes in and immediately it's like, oh, okay, unless they're a really special talent. You know what? I'll use the same example in Jared Goff, right? Sammy Watkins is just that special. Everybody's talking about that connection. Goff to Watkins. Well, look at the guy had to adjust 2 different times on that route. He's just that good. And I don't think there is a player as good as Alshon is. I don't think he's not a Sammy Watkins talent. So I give him a little bit of a break there on the deep ball accuracy. I do think it'll come, and I think that's on the receiver as well, that the great ones, they make their quarterbacks look a lot better. Because it's not easy to put a ball, on the head of a pin 50 yards down the field.
Well, they call you Money for a reason, so let me end you with this one as we're talking to Matt Money Smith, the play-by-play voice of the Los Angeles Chargers. Eagles will be going up against the Chargers. What do you think decides this game? What does this game come down to?
Oh, I think ultimately it's going to come down to whether or not the Chargers can run the ball, because I think that's what's held them up. Phillip passed, and look, I get that he threw the 3 interceptions last week, but I think if they can run the ball, have good play action, they need to score points. I believe their defense is going to be able to hold up, especially with that pass rush. And like you said, you're kind of figuring out who's going to run the ball, what kind of running team can we be if they can make the Eagles one-dimensional. I have faith in that part. I think it comes down to who wins the run game battle. If the Eagles can hold up against the run and force Rivers to be one-dimensional as well, I think that spells trouble for the Chargers. I think if the Chargers run effectively, they end up getting their first win.
Has the commitment to the run game by Lynn, has that been frustrating to some of the players and the fans, just, being close to that situation that you are?
A little bit, but at the same time, when Phillip throws 3 interceptions in a half, it's kind of like, hey, why don't we do that a little bit more? What do you say, huh? So, I think it's going to work out all right for Lynn based on just that one half, knowing how good the darn defense was that day, and it was that day that Phillip Rivers, ended up having that kind of performance.
Well, Matt, we appreciate you giving us a few minutes. Thanks so much. Let's do it again real soon.
You got it, Zach. Anytime, man.